Hello, welcome to the channel Our Day Stories. Sit back and listen to a new story. But don't forget to subscribe and like it.
Melissa ran around the apartment, getting ready for her flight. She worked as a flight attendant. It was her childhood dream to visit different countries and see the whole world. She also loved the altitude. She had no fear of it. On the contrary, she felt an indescribable thrill as she watched the clouds pass by outside the window and the tiny cities below. There was one thing that saddened Melissa every time she went on a flight. She had to leave her 3 children with a nanny. The little ones found it very difficult to say goodbye. They cried and didn't want their mom to leave. 3-year-old Mila was especially upset. She clung tightly to her mom, holding on with all her might and whispering, "Don't go, Mommy. I don't want you to. Will you come back soon? We're so sad without you." Tears filled Melissa's eyes as she stroked the children's heads and tried to comfort them as best she could. "Mama will be back soon. She'll earn some money and bring gifts for everyone. Andrew, my son, you're the oldest. Take care of your little sisters and listen to Nanny Lyuba. I promise, when I come back, we'll all go to Disneyland for a whole day." On the way to the airport, Melissa closed her eyes and began to reminisce about her life. Just a little while ago, she couldn't have imagined that she would become a mother to 3 children and lose her beloved husband because of it. And how beautifully it all began. Melissa grew up in an orphanage. She was a round-faced orphan with no known relatives. She was left at the orphanage gates just a week after she was born. There was no note, no name, nothing. It was as if they had thrown away an unwanted kitten over the gate and moved on. The janitor, Feeder, was sweeping the orphanage grounds early in the morning when he found the basket with the baby. The little girl grew up quiet and calm. The caregivers and nannies loved her for her obedience and lively mind. Other children often tried to tease and bully Melissa, but her best friend, Kristen, always stood up for her. Kristen was the complete opposite of Melissa, energetic, determined, and would fight alongside the boys. But the girls got along perfectly. They complemented each other. Melissa always balanced her friend, while Kristen tried to liven up the overly calm girl. In terms of appearance, Melissa and Kristen looked very similar, both dark-skinned with brown eyes and beautiful curly hair, like sisters. Melissa excelled in her studies. She easily grasped all subjects, especially English. Even her pronunciation came naturally without any effort. The teacher, Mr. Anton Vasilievich, couldn't be happier, as usually children struggled with basic subjects, let alone English. But Melissa was different. She diligently studied reference books, dictionaries, and read additional literature to master the English language. Kristen, on the other hand, struggled with her studies. Melissa often did her homework for her, and Kristen dreamed of a handsome and wealthy prince and an easy marriage. The girls loved to chat for a long time and made plans for the future. Melissa shared her aspirations. "You know, Kristen, my biggest desire is to get into university, major in foreign languages, and have a good profession to make my way in life. Although I understand that it's almost impossible for an orphan to get there. They only offer us sewing or cooking, university, and that's it. I also want to experience a real flight on an airplane. Can you imagine how amazing it must be up there, among the clouds?" Kristen, however, had a different opinion. "No, I definitely don't want to study. It's not for me. I dream of meeting a wealthy husband and living a carefree life, enjoying everything already prepared for me." "Well, why not? Aren't we beautiful? Don't we deserve it? Who knows, maybe luck will be on our side." Melissa could only laugh. "Well, you can say that too. Rich princes marry equally well-off princesses, and love with a poor orphan only happens in fairy tales and TV shows. It's definitely unrealistic in real life. However, life took its course for the girls without asking anyone's opinion. After leaving the orphanage, our friends were assigned to the outskirts of the city and given a rundown room in a family hostel. Melissa was very disappointed, but Kristen cheered her up. "Don't worry, my friend. You know I'm handy. We'll fix up this place and it'll be livable. The important thing is that we're together, side by side. It's already more fun." Over time, the girls settled in. Melissa actually enrolled in university, albeit through distance learning, and took a job at a gas station as a cashier, working 3 shifts a day just to make a living. One day, a respectable man, pleasant and smelling of expensive perfume, pulled up to refuel at their gas station. Melissa served him courteously, and he couldn't take his eyes off the beautiful Eastern-eyed beauty. For some reason, the girl's heart started beating faster, and a silly smile wouldn't leave her face. When the customer left, Melissa suddenly realized that he had forgotten to take his change, and it was a significant amount. Without hesitation, she apologized to the people waiting in line and rushed out onto the street. "Sir, wait. You forgot your change. Here, take it." He turned around and looked at the young girl with surprise. "Oh, right, I got lost in my thoughts. Thank you for returning it. There are hardly any honest cashiers left these days. My name is Mark. And you?" I'm Melissa," the girl answered shyly. Mark smiled. "I invite you, Melissa, to dinner as a token of gratitude and simply because I liked you a lot. I know a decent Japanese restaurant. Do you like Japanese cuisine?" Melissa's heart was ready to jump out of her chest. She even blushed. "Well, I don't know. It's so unexpected. Can I bring a friend with me? I'm a little scared. After all, I don't know you at all." The man laughed. "Of course you can. In that case, I'll bring a friend too. It will be even more fun." "Well then, see you tomorrow. Goodbye." Melissa waved cheerfully and ran back to the cashier's desk, where the customers in line were already grumbling. The day flew by unnoticed, and in the evening, when she got home, the girl rushed to Kristen to share the news. Kristen clapped her hands in excitement. "Well done, you, and you didn't forget about me either, and such a quiet one. Who knows, maybe luck will be on our side, and these businessmen aren't married. I won't let mine slip away. I'll trap him right away. I'm so tired of stitching bed sheets. I can't take it anymore." Her friend looked embarrassed. "Well, I don't know. Let's see how everything goes. It's so unexpected, of course. And what if we embarrass ourselves? We've never been to a Japanese restaurant before. We probably have to eat with chopsticks, and I don't know how. The rich folks will laugh at us and leave." Kristen waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, you're such a worrywart, Melissa. We'll figure it out when the time comes. Rather, think about what we're going to wear. We can't go in jeans and sneakers, can we?" Melissa's fears were completely unfounded. The evening went wonderfully. Alex came with his friend, Andrew. They worked in different companies but were friends and occasionally hung out together. Mark was divorced and Andrew wasn't married yet, so it turned out to be 2 families coming together. Andrew and Kristen were a perfect match. They never argued, and she gave birth to their son, Andrew, named after his father, and 2 more children, Sveta and Milachka, within 2 years. Surprisingly, pregnancy and childbirth were easy for her friend. She didn't even gain weight and was always positive and active. It seemed like her boundless energy was enough for 5 children. The home and children were her responsibility. She took them to school and daycare, then to extracurricular activities, managed to cook delicious meals and spoil her husband. Everything seemed to be under her control. Meanwhile, Melissa's personal life didn't go so smoothly. She loved Mark, despite his difficult character, and tried to please him in everything. She was torn between studying, work, and home. However, she couldn't get pregnant, no matter what, though Alex didn't insist on it. On the contrary, when they occasionally visited Kristen and Andrew, he was shocked and often complained later. "Oh my God, it's a madhouse over there. Noise, chaos, constant screaming. It's like a daycare, not a home. Your friend must be out of her mind, breeding like a cat. There's no personal life at all. I'd go crazy if I were in her shoes." On the contrary, Melissa secretly envied Kristen. Their home was always cheerful and filled with the smell of cinnamon cookies and childhood memories. That's what a real strong family looked like, the kind they had dreamt of with their friend at the shelter. Melissa started noticing that Alex had become much colder towards her. He often allowed himself to come home late, and intimacy became something mundane and routine. It felt like a wall was growing between them, thin at first, but getting thicker and thicker over the years. And then, a year ago, a terrible tragedy occurred. Kristen and Andrew went to a charity evening where they were buying paintings and donating money to shelters. They left their little ones with a nanny. But on their way home, a drunk daredevil crashed into them on the night road. In an instant, Melissa lost the person closest to her, her husband, and Kristen's 3 children were left orphans. Her friend couldn't allow such a thing to happen. They had made a vow back in the orphanage that they wouldn't betray each other and would be together till the end. And she made up her mind to become their legal guardian and take all 3 children in. But it wasn't that simple. Mark, upon learning about it, went into a rage and started yelling. "I don't understand. Have you gone crazy? Only over my dead body. I'm categorically against it. Why do we need 3 brats, especially someone else's? They need to be fed, clothed, educated, and provided for. So your friend and Andrew had them. Now we have to deal with it." The woman cried and tried to reason with her cruel husband. "Mark, snap out of it. How can you say such things? Kristen died, she had an accident, and your friend, by the way, too. She was closer to me than a sister, always fought for me in the orphanage. We shared every crust of bread. The children are not to blame. What awaits them in the orphanage? Have you been there? Do you know? It's hell. You wouldn't wish it on your worst enemy. Moreover, they can be separated, and then they'll grow up far apart. Well, we're not poor, barely making ends meet. Let's give these little ones a happy childhood. Besides, we don't have any of our own." But Mark slammed his fist on the table and shouted, nearly swearing. "I said no, and that's final. If you take the children, then it's an immediate divorce. I don't need other people's mouths to feed, so I can slave away for them my whole life." It was very difficult for Melissa to make this choice because she truly loved Mark and understood that if she took the children, she would most likely end up alone, as 3 children were not the same as 1. But she couldn't betray her friend. How could she sleep peacefully knowing that Kristen's children were suffering in the shelter? She still proceeded with the legal guardianship and divorced Mark. He angrily shouted at her as a parting remark, "What a fool you are. You'll regret losing a man like me, but it'll be too late." Melissa simply waved her hand, tears streaming down her face. "So it seems my fate is destined to be full of sorrow. Farewell, Mark, and be happy." She cried for a long time into her pillow at home, unable to understand how it had come to this. Why was Alex such a cruel person? Didn't he feel an ounce of pity for the children? Was there no stir in his soul at all? Melissa combined her and Kristen's rooms, and she ended up with a 2-bedroom apartment. This is where she brought the 3 children. As soon as the distant relatives of Kristen's late husband found out about the property, they swarmed in, but they didn't want the children for free. So they were simply delighted that someone blissfully appeared, ready to take on such an overwhelming burden. Only one person supported Melissa, and that was kind-hearted neighbor Aunt Clava. She agreed to look after the little ones on the days when Melissa was at work. Initially, it was incredibly difficult. They were always short on money, and Melissa had to constantly borrow from colleagues until her next paycheck, and the children couldn't come to terms with the death of their parents and recover from the grief. While little Mila immediately clung to Melissa, the older Andrew distanced himself, closed off, and even started stuttering out of nervousness. Whenever Melissa tried to hug or cuddle him, he recoiled and muttered, "You're not my mom. Why did she abandon us? Why did she die? And Dad, too. I don't want it like this. I want it like before, to live with Mom and Dad." It took a long time to take him to a psychologist and help him overcome this state, and it wasn't easy for Melissa either because 3 children were very demanding. She often thought about Kristen, wondering where her friend found the strength not to tire and share her love among everyone. How did she manage it? 6 months passed, and Melissa was completely exhausted, but no matter how much she worked, there was never enough money, and to make matters worse, Andrew fell seriously ill. He had always been quiet and calm, unlike the energetic Svetlana and Mila, but now he seemed even weaker. He slept a lot, and the skin around his nose and lips often turned blue. Even after walking a short distance, he complained of chest pain. Then he fainted during a physical education class at school. The boy was admitted to the children's department for a comprehensive examination. That's where they discovered that he had a heart defect and needed surgery. But as usual, it cost an exorbitant amount of money. They were put on the waiting list based on a quota, but they had to wait for over a year. However, one chance encounter turned Melissa's life upside down. Our heroine had just finished her shift and was hurrying to the store for groceries and then home to the children. At the door, Melissa collided with a stylishly and fashionably dressed lady wearing dark sunglasses and an expensive handbag across her shoulder. The stranger suddenly took off her sunglasses and exclaimed, "Melissa, darling, hello. How are you? It's been ages since we last saw each other. Where have you been? I haven't heard anything about you since the divorce from Marcos." Melissa was shocked to recognize in this lady their mutual acquaintance, Inga, the ex-wife of her former husband. The women were delighted to see each other, sat down at a nearby cafe table, and started chatting like old friends. Inga shared that she had also divorced her husband, Arseny, who was a well-known playboy and troublemaker. She left everything behind and became a flight attendant. She was happy and content, with great pay and the opportunity to see the world. The job wasn't without its challenges, but it was rewarding. Melissa, on the other hand, shared that she was now raising 3 children from her deceased friend, and it was very difficult. Her cashier's salary wasn't enough to make ends meet, and she struggled financially. Inga immediately suggested, without hesitation, "Melissa, why are you hesitating? Quit this gas station job and join us. You speak English excellently and you have education. You're such a beauty. How about I talk to the management and inquire on your behalf?" Melissa was taken aback and replied, "Oh, come on, you say that too. You're single, but I have 3 children to take care of. Where would I put them? I need to be with them every day, especially when I'm on flights. Although I would be happy to do it, it's been my dream since childhood." Inga countered, "Melissa, we don't live in the Stone Age. That's why nannies exist. I'll tell you how much you'll earn per month, and you'll understand everything. I understand that it involves constant traveling, but you'll be able to provide for your family decently instead of worrying about buying bread or sausages." Upon hearing the salary figure, Melissa even whistled. She had never seen such money before, and compared to that amount, her current earnings at the gas station were peanuts. Melissa weighed her options. Why not give it a try? What if they take me? I have nothing to lose. Plus, I can enroll Svetochka in daycare and save up for Andrew's surgery. The children have been needing new clothes for a while, and some repairs wouldn't hurt either. But it means constant traveling, which means the little ones will be sad again and suffer from separation. What should I do? After carefully considering everything, Melissa made up her mind. I agree. Let me know where to go and what to do. I want to give it a try. My personal life hasn't worked out. Maybe at least my childhood dream will come true. Melissa successfully completed the training courses where she learned first aid protocols, how to handle passengers according to instructions, and how to deal with difficult customers, which were frequent during flights. The final assessment tested her English proficiency and behavior in emergency situations. Just 3 months later, Melissa embarked on her first flight. The children panicked and cried out, "Mama, Don't leave. You won't be here for a whole week. How will we survive without you? Don't abandon us." Melissa's heart was breaking into pieces because she had genuinely grown to love all three of them and considered them her own. She tried to reassure them as best she could. "My dears, I can't do it any other way. This new job will bring in a lot of money, and we'll buy you toys and clothes. Go to the amusement park. Just bear with it. Listen to Grandma Clava, behave well so I won't worry, and then I'll find a nanny for you and we'll choose together. Andrew, be careful not to eat ice cream. Your throat is sensitive, and don't let Mile walk barefoot on the cold floor, and don't stay up too late. Otherwise, I won't be able to wake you up in the morning. Okay, my little bunnies, come here and let me give you a tight hug." During Melissa's first flight, she was extremely nervous, her veins trembling, especially when the plane entered a turbulent zone. But over time, she got used to it and found great joy in her work. The only things that saddened her were the constant flights and being away from her little ones. After 6 months, life really improved. Melissa no longer worried about paying bills or buying clothes and groceries. Everything was taken care of. She was proud that her children always looked neat and had phones and new toys like everyone else. Sometimes Kristen appeared in her dreams. She didn't say anything but just looked at her friend with a grateful smile, and Melissa knew she was doing everything right. Today, Melissa was departing on a special flight. Her colleague convinced her to serve a wedding for wealthy people right in the sky on the airplane. That was the kind of extravagance the rich indulged in. They promised to pay handsomely. Melissa wasn't particularly thrilled. She had already dealt with unruly drunk passengers. However, she decided that the amount they offered would definitely come in handy. She could put it towards her son's surgery. There would be more. With a heavy heart, she agreed. The private plane had a bar counter and a dance floor, all the conditions for a heavenly celebration. The few guests, all richly dressed, had gathered and the plane took off. Pilot Sergei was experienced and someone Melissa had known for a long time, so she felt at ease. He was a true ace in his field. But fate had it that the plane entered a turbulent zone, and it shook vigorously. Frightened passengers panicked and started to protest. Melissa and her colleague maintained their composure as instructed, helping them return to their seats and fasten their seatbelts. Just as our heroine was securing a young woman, she glanced at the groom sitting behind her and gasped. It was Mark, her ex-husband. Her soul was stirred and turned upside down. She even felt sick. She hurriedly turned away to avoid being recognized and went to the front of the aircraft. Thoughts raced through her mind. You scoundrel. So you found yourself a rich girl. Well, your wife will suffer. You'll get your comeuppance. The wedding was in full swing, with guests feasting on delicacies and drinking champagne, getting drunk and dancing to loud music. Melissa's colleague was running around like crazy, serving the clients, while Melissa herself hardly appeared in the salon. Alina got furious and confronted her. "Melissa, why aren't you mingling with the guests? Decided to leave it all to me? I'm exhausted. And the earnings, are we splitting them 50-50? You sly fox." With tears in her eyes, Melissa replied, "Just take the entire fee. Do you even know who's getting married? It's my ex-husband, Mark. He left me and found himself a wealthy girl. Do you think it's pleasant for me to watch all of this? My heart is bleeding. Even if you kill me, I won't go out there." Elena fell silent and then responded, "Well, if that's the case, I'll manage somehow. Don't get so upset, you'll find your love again." Melissa quietly observed the celebration and noticed something. Her ex-husband was increasingly exchanging glances with a young beauty who was one of the guests invited to the wedding. Then he wrote something on a napkin and discreetly passed it to her. The girl read it, smirked cunningly, and threw it into the trash bin. The young bride didn't notice anything since the celebration was in full swing. The plane landed in an exotic country and was supposed to stay grounded for a day. Without knowing why, Melissa immediately started rummaging through the trash bin, searching for that very napkin. Her inner instinct told her that something was not right here. Finally, amidst the pile of garbage, she found it, unfolded it, and read, "My love, calm down, don't be angry. I don't love that idiot, and I'll soon get rid of her. It's all for us. We'll live like kings with her millions." Melissa's blood rushed to her head. That's how things stood. What a scoundrel. It meant that the bride was in real danger. She needed to warn her immediately. The woman found the guest list with the pilot, discovered Karina Vasilieva's name and phone number, and as soon as she disembarked from the plane, she called her. "Hello, is this Karina? Hello, my name is Melissa. I'm a flight attendant on the plane you flew on today. I urgently need to meet with you one-on-one. You're in danger. I beg you, just 10 minutes of your time." The girl responded dissatisfiedly. "What silly jokes are these? I just got married and it's my honeymoon, by the way. Well, if you insist, let's meet today at a cafe. I'll send you the address via SMS, but I think you've got something mixed up. My husband adores me and nothing threatens me for sure." Melissa arrived at the cafe even earlier, afraid of being late. She ordered coffee and waited for Karina. Exactly at the appointed time, the girl, so sweet, radiant, and happy, walked into the establishment. Melissa waved to her. Karina sat at the table, ready to hear what Melissa had to say. "Well, spill it. What did you come to tell me? What did you want to say?" Silently, Melissa handed her the napkin. Karina read the message written on it about 5 times, and her expression changed drastically. There was no doubt about it. It was Mark's handwriting. Karina exclaimed, "Where did you get this?" Melissa began to explain incoherently, "You see, when I agreed to serve at a private wedding, I didn't know who was getting married. And then in the salon, I saw Mark. He's my ex-husband, but that's not the point. I saw Alex winking at a lady, a fair-skinned one. She was wearing a burgundy dress. And then he passed her that napkin. So I decided to secretly take a look at what was written there. And when I read it, I was shocked, and I thought I should warn you. But it's up to you to decide what to do with it." Karina's expression changed, and she became sad and pensive. She said, "I don't know whether to thank you or hate you. Just half an hour ago, I was the happiest woman in the world, and now I realize that my husband has a lover. It's terrible. I'm sorry, I need to go. I need to think about everything. But wait a moment. Alex told me that his ex-wife was a greedy, scandalous bitch who only drained him of money, partied, and didn't work anywhere. So that's you." Melissa bitterly smirked and said, "Well, Alex is skilled at feeding you lies, and you're not far behind. I worked as a cashier at a gas station my whole life, never stayed at home, and I truly loved that scoundrel despite his difficult character. But my close friend was in a terrible accident and died. She left 3 orphaned children. Tell me, could I abandon them? I grew up as an orphan myself, and I know how terrible it is in orphanages. I begged and pleaded with Mark to take them in, but he refused. He said he didn't need someone else's burdens, and this was despite the fact that the children's father was his best friend. We were friends as families. That's why we got divorced. So now I'm a mother of 3 children, doing my best to get by. And I ask you, please be careful. You don't know your husband very well. Alex is capable of many things for money. I'll go now. I wish you all the best." Karina decided to double-check everything. A worm of doubt was eating away at her from the inside. When she arrived home, she discreetly installed cameras in the apartment and played it smart. In the evening during dinner, she intriguingly announced to her husband, "Darling, I forgot to tell you. I have the most important gift for you. Can you guess?" Mark dreamily pondered and said, "What has my sweetheart come up with? Could it be a car as a gift for me?" Karina laughed and said, "Even better. I'm pregnant. You'll soon be a father. Isn't it fantastic? We'll have a baby. Yours and mine." In reality, Karina wasn't actually pregnant. She just wanted to see her husband's reaction, and at the same time expedite the verification process. After all, if he wanted to get rid of her, he would do it as quickly as possible, because he definitely didn't want a child. Mark tried to express exuberant joy, but it came out funny and unbelievable, and Karina noticed it immediately. Now she started looking at her husband in a completely different way, noticing those little things she had never seen before. The next day, out of the blue, Mark said, "You know what, my love? Let's celebrate this occasion, somewhere secluded, by a lake or a river, with wine, fruits, and an abundance of love." Karina immediately sensed something was wrong and replied, "Great, but I'm feeling a bit unwell now, you know. Let's stay home instead. We can sit on the summer terrace, celebrate, and then take a stroll in the park." Mark volunteered to organize everything himself. He ordered seafood, salads, drinks, juice, and set the table himself. He said to Karina, "You just relax, my dear, take it easy. You need to take care of yourself right now. I'll handle it all, don't worry. I'll prepare a romantic surprise for you." Karina went to her room and watched her husband's actions through a mobile application. What she saw shocked her. Mark opened a bottle of her favorite orange juice, added some powder to it, shook it well, and closed it. Then he put the small vial in his pocket. The shaken woman immediately called the police. After crossing herself, she calmly walked out to her husband. He was sitting at a lavishly set table, beaming like a polished samovar. Mark promptly served a salad alongside the main course and poured juice for his wife, saying, "I thought about it, and since you can't have wine now, I bought your favorite orange juice with pulp. Shall we drink, my love? To us, to our little one. I'm so happy." Karina smiled radiantly and said, "Of course, my love. Let's just wait for the guests for a couple more minutes." Mark's face changed and he became tense. "Did you invite someone? Why?" "We agreed it would be a romantic dinner." The girl winked playfully at him. "This will be another surprise. I adore surprises. After all, we're on our honeymoon, we should have fun." There was a knock on the apartment door, and Karina went to answer it. 2 police officers stood at the threshold. They introduced themselves and asked, "You called the police to this address. What happened?" Karina calmly replied, "My husband wants to poison me. There's poison in the glass and in the juice bottle. I have all the evidence, and there's a small vial from the poison in the right pocket of his trousers." The police immediately handcuffed Mark and began searching him. Indeed, they found a small vial in his pants with a bit of white powder left. They confiscated it, along with the juice. They started questioning Mark. "Care to explain what's in the vial? Are you really trying to harm your wife? Although you don't have to explain, let the investigator at the station deal with you." Mark yelled profanities. "You snake, and you look like a fool. Let me go. This is an abuse of power. It's my heart medication. I've never tried to harm anyone." Karina smirked bitterly. "You can't wriggle out of this, darling. I have a recording of you putting powder in my juice, and you're calling someone, promising to get rid of me permanently. Just explain one thing to me. Why? Why did you marry me, sing songs of love, swear loyalty, if all this time you had a mistress and dreamed of getting rid of me? You could have had it all anyway. Your business was on the verge of collapse, and it was my investments that saved it, and this is how you decided to repay me. I can't believe it." Mark threw a fit of hysteria. "You ask why? Because sharing is caring. You've had everything since birth. I had to make my own way. It's unfair, at least it seems that way to me. Why can't I enjoy life and swim in millions? Why not with you? Have you ever looked at yourself in the mirror? A gray mouse with a switch instead of a nose. Who would even look at you with love? Skinny as a board, nothing special. I'm already tired of you. You've become a pain in the neck. I just can't understand. How did you find out what I planned?" No one knew about it. Karina burst into laughter. "There are good people in the world. I'll make sure you get the maximum sentence, so you can rot in prison instead of enjoying resorts. Take this scoundrel away. I'll file for divorce myself. When they took Mark away, Karina finally allowed herself to relax and burst into tears. She longed to share her grief with someone, and she remembered the flight attendant, so she immediately dialed her number. "Melissa, are you in town? You were right back then. Mark almost killed me. He wanted to poison me, the scoundrel. Can you come to me? Please, I'm in such a bad state." Melissa rushed over right away. She understood how much Karina was suffering, having barely recovered from her painful divorce. They hugged like close friends, drank wine, and cried, easing each other's souls. Karina couldn't thank Melissa enough. "Thank you, Melissa. You truly saved my life. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't be alive right now, and that scumbag would be living happily with his bimbo on my money. We live in the same city. Let's be friends. Let's hang out. You mentioned you had problems with your son. I can help. Find a doctor, and I'll cover all the expenses. I don't know about you, but after this, I won't approach men for a long time. Everyone just sees me as a bag of money, and no one cares about my soul. Let them all go to hell." From that day on, Melissa and Karina became best friends. Karina often visited their house, and the children instantly loved her because she was very kind and adored kids. They had an expensive heart surgery for their son, Andrew, and as promised, Karina helped with the money, and the boy quickly recovered. Melissa even took time off work and spent all her time at her son's bedside. It was then, perhaps for the first time since the death of his parents, that he sincerely hugged her and said, "Mommy, I love you so much. We are a real, close-knit family. Thank you. I'm not a little kid anymore, and I understand how difficult it can be for you to take care of us." Melissa hugged her son back and whispered, "All three of you are like family to me for a long time now. Remember that no matter what happens, I'm here, always ready to protect you from any harm. I will never abandon you." In turn, Karina decided to introduce Melissa to her mother. The woman's name was Antonina Petrovna, and she had worked as a midwife in a maternity hospital her whole life. She never left her profession until the very end, despite being married to a millionaire. She genuinely loved her work and cared deeply about each case. She had a severe, incurable illness, and she had only a few months left to live. Karina hired the best caregivers, ordered strong painkillers, and visited her mother as often as possible. She didn't know how to tell her about Alex being such a scoundrel, and Karina was alone again. Her mother was so relieved to know that her daughter was in good hands. To soften the heavy conversation, Karina decided to introduce her mother to Melissa, her best friend. Melissa greeted her and looked at the poor woman with eyes sunken from illness. They started by discussing the scoundrel, Mark, and Antonina Petrovna nodded her head in disbelief, saying, "Oh, my dear, how fortunate you were that God saved you from certain death. And thank you so much, Melissa, for not standing aside and warning my daughter about the danger. Tell me a little about yourself. Who are your parents? How do you live? I don't go out anymore. I don't have the strength, and human interaction is very important to me." Melissa began to tell her story. "I'm an orphan myself, raised in the Ray of Hope shelter. I was left there almost immediately after birth with no note or any information. I was found by our janitor, Uncle Fyodor. It was he who named me Melissa, like his granddaughter, and gave me the same rare surname, Schutzberg, as his own. He had German ancestry. There I became friends with a girl named Kristen. We were like sisters, even closer. We swore to each other that no matter what happened, we wouldn't abandon each other and would always support one another. Later on, we both got married almost at the same time. Kristen gave birth to 3 children, but I couldn't conceive. Ironically, Mark, the scoundrel, was my ex-husband. We had our ups and downs like any other couple. He had a difficult personality, but I loved him deeply and tried to adapt. But then a terrible tragedy occurred. My friend and her husband died in a car accident, and in an instant the children became orphans. Tell me, how could I abandon them? Betray my friend. I decided to become their guardian and raise them. But my husband caused a terrible scandal. He was strongly against it, so we divorced. And then I became a flight attendant. It was on the plane, while serving his wedding, that I witnessed the treachery of my ex-husband. Antonina Petrovna looked at Melissa with wide eyes and said, "Wait, Melissa, how old are you, dear?" Melissa replied with surprise, 27, just like Karina. Why? Why are you asking? Suddenly, the elderly woman burst into bitter tears, trembling all over. "Forgive me, Melissa. Please forgive me if you can. It was me who left you at the shelter, you understand. It all makes sense now." Melissa was stunned and Karina was speechless. She asked her mother, "How is that possible? Mom, you're talking nonsense. Are you feeling all right? How do you feel?" Karina and Melissa exchanged glances, both thinking that the woman's mind might have been affected by her illness. But Antonina Petrovna regained her composure and continued, "Don't look at me like that. I haven't gone mad. Listen to me until the end without interrupting. I came from a poor family myself. I grew up in poverty. My mother worked as a nanny, and my father was a heavy drinker. Since childhood, I dreamt of becoming a doctor, obsessed with the idea. Of course, I couldn't afford to enter medical school without money, but I managed to get into a technical college and became a midwife. I loved my job passionately. I worried about every expectant mother and did my best. I got married to a builder, Nikolay, but he too loved to drink and we didn't have children. I suffered for 3 years with him and eventually divorced. So I lived alone. By that time, my parents had already passed away. And then one night, a woman came running to me, banging on the door. I came out half asleep, unable to understand anything, and she shouted, "Antonina, please help. I beg you. A woman is giving birth in our basement. She's screaming loudly." I said, "Call an ambulance. The medics will help her. What does that have to do with me?" But the woman kept begging me. "She can't go to the ambulance. Katya is homeless. She has no documents. It's a dark story. She's going to die. She's been suffering for hours. Help. I pity the dog, and here a man is dying. Have mercy." How could I refuse? I had taken the Hippocratic Oath. I quickly gathered sheets and a basin, alcohol, and a tonometer and rushed off. A young woman, no more than 20 years old, was giving birth in a shelter for the homeless. Her name was Catherine. She was pregnant with twins. The labor was complicated. The woman was thrashing around in her bunk. I was even frightened at first. What if she died in my arms? And I would also go to jail. But then I pulled myself together and began delivering the baby. Fortunately, everything turned out okay. The 2 girls were born. They didn't weigh much, but they looked healthy. I cut the cord, swaddled the babies as they should be, and the mother is crying and turning her nose up at them. Thank you. Finally, I gave birth. I thought I was going to die. Take the babies away, I don't need them. Give them to an orphanage or something. I'm a vagrant. I'm facing jail time. I'm on the run from the police. What am I going to do with 2 kids? And I got them pregnant. One of them took them and threw them away, and I just carried them away. I was indignant. How could it be, Katya? Can't you even look at the babies? You've been carrying them for 9 months. They are your own flesh and blood. But the woman in labor flatly refused. No, or I'll be sorry, I know myself. Take it away, I beg you. I'm lost, I'm good for nothing. At the orphanage, maybe someone will adopt and the girls' lives will get better. I'm sure they won't have a good life with me. What can I do? I brought the babies home, crying my heart out. I myself do not have children, and here are 2, and do not want his own mother. And then I had a crazy idea. I decided to keep one of the babies, adopt them, and raise them as my own. I couldn't decide to keep 2 of them because I'm divorced, and I was afraid I wouldn't be able to. That's when I took you, Melissa, to the baby's home at night, wrapped you up warmly, and left you. I knew they would find you in the morning, and I kept Karinatka, adopted her as she should have, gave her surname, and raised her as my own daughter. But my heart was not in place, and I was slowly learning about your fate. I was told that a janitor found you and gave you your last name, and then I found out a year later what orphanage you were in. The nurse said that you were smart and cute, like a doll. Maybe I would get lucky and someone would take you away. And then my life changed abruptly, and I met Stepan, who fell in love with me at first sight. We met at the maternity hospital. He was visiting his sister there. I looked a lot like his mother, so he fell in love with me. He took Karina as his own, adopted her as he should have. She was 3 years old at the time. He moved me to his mansion. Stepan already had a big business. He had his own stores. He could provide me with everything. He didn't insist that I work. But I didn't want to. So I worked until my retirement as a midwife. I often thought of you, Melissa. My conscience tormented me. I never told Stepan the whole truth. I thought you'd been adopted long ago. Both my husband and I loved Karina as our own. We loved her dearly. Stepan died a year ago, so suddenly a blood clot broke off, and then I got sick, probably on nervous grounds. Pulls the last juice out of me, cursed disease. Soon it will take me to itself. At least I relieved my soul before I died, and that's easier. So forgive me, Melissa. I was a coward. I chickened out. I separated you from your sister. And when I hear your story, I know what a saintly woman you are. You put 3 children on your shoulders. You weren't afraid of anything. And I couldn't. Karina and Melissa were shocked when they heard everything. Then they looked at each other and simultaneously cried and threw themselves into each other's arms. Karina sobbed. Melissa, my little sister. Oh my God, what happiness. It's unbelievable. We had become best friends, shared one husband for 2, and didn't even know that we were sisters. Melissa wailed too. You know, Karinka, and then I was so offended at you on the plane, I thought. That's who I was traded for. Believe me, as if you're not a stranger to me. And I decided to find you to warn you, and it turns out it was the voice of blood, probably. Sister, I thought I was alone, like a finger in the world, with no relatives, no one. And then I was so happy. Melissa tearfully rushed to Antonina Petrovna. I'm not angry with you at all. Why? You didn't give birth to us. On the contrary, if it were not for you, my sister, and I would not have existed. A woman in labor could have died without any help. Thank you, at least Karina was raised. What about our mother? You don't know anything about her. Is she alive or dead? Antonina Petrovna shook her head. No, alas, I know almost nothing about her, except that the woman's name was Ekaterina Terakova. I delivered the baby and left with the little ones. As a farewell, I gave the wretched mother a packet of antibiotics, told her to take them just in case. That is all. I never met her again. Why she was homeless, what she had done, and why she was hiding from the police was also unknown to me. I didn't give her up like she asked me to. Karina was confused. Mammy, I am amazed. Why didn't you tell me this before? After all, I could not know about his own sister. Well, is it possible? Antonina Petrovna cried. Forgive me, my daughter. I was terribly ashamed. My conscience burned all these years that I separated you, although I myself have lived as in Christ's bosom. I could have put Melissa back on her feet, just feared that Stepan knows my terrible secret and left me immediately. And then, well, how do you tell? Your family to me. Do you understand it or not? I don't even have the heart to call you adopted. I sincerely love you. Karina threw herself into her arms around her beloved. Sorry, Mommy. I also love you a lot and am grateful for a happy and carefree childhood, and I loved my dad and could not even think that I was a stranger. All 3 still had a long heart-to-heart talk because they were connected by one common thread of family and destiny. From that day on, the sisters were almost inseparable. Karina enjoyed babysitting the little ones on weekends and now took them to her place when Melissa was on another flight. And for little Mila, Karina became a godmother. A year later, a representative of another branch came to Karina's company with a delegation. After the official part of the visit, there was to be a dinner party. Karina decided to invite Melissa there as well. The director, Yegor, immediately noticed such a beautiful young woman. He began to actively court, to pay compliments, and his colleague, Artem, courted Karina. When the guests were almost gone, Yegor asked Melissa quietly, "Let me walk you home, Melissa, and maybe have a cup of coffee? I don't want to part with you." The woman laughed. "You're wasting your breath. I'm a mother of 3 children." Usually after this phrase, any fan of the classics should evaporate. Who needs such a burden? Yegor also laughed. "So our case is not a classic. It does not scare me at all. I am a widower and also raise a son alone. His name is Roma, he's 5. So I completely understand you. So I'll walk you out. Do you mind?" Melissa had forgotten what it was like to walk hand in hand with a man. They admired the bright stars and strolled leisurely through the night city. Melissa quietly turned the key in the lock. It was quiet in the apartment. The night light was on. There were toys scattered everywhere and a pile of dishes and cookie crumbs in the kitchen. The little ones were asleep in their cribs. In the middle of the table, there was a covered plate. Melissa opened it and saw a masterpiece: scrambled eggs and a smile drawn with ketchup, and a note misspelled in a child's handwriting. "We made you dinner. Your homework is done. Bon appetit. We love you, Mommy." Tears flowed past her will from Melissa's eyes. She wiped them away with her hand and said, "For moments like these, it's probably worth living. This is the most important thing in the world. How I love them. You have no idea." She quietly went into the bedroom, readjusted the confused blanket, stroked each of them on the head, and kissed them softly. And only then she and Igor sat down in the kitchen for coffee. Igor was amazed at the courage and kindness of this fragile woman, working as a stewardess and raising 3 other people's children at the same time, and to remain so attractive and desirable at the same time. He couldn't get enough of Melissa. He loved everything about her: how she squinted at the sun, how she turned her head, tossed a curl behind her ear, laughed so brightly, so euphoniously. The man realized that he fell in love, completely and irrevocably. The couple began dating and soon planned a modest wedding. Surprisingly, Melissa's children immediately accepted Yegor, and his son became friends with Melissa, and they now had 4 children together. Igor was a very successful businessman, and Melissa no longer needed to work. She could finally focus on her family, her children, and herself. Yegor used to say jokingly, "And if you miss the sky, just say the word, and we'll fly the whole family wherever you say." Karina also found her love, a friend and companion of Yegor, Artem. The man has long sought the woman's attention because the woman, painfully burned by her marriage to the scoundrel Mark, was afraid to let Artem into her soul. But he was persistent and patient. He was always near her, surrounded her with such care and tenderness that in the end, Karina gave up, and they also modestly signed. The woman did not want any more ostentatiousness. Now it was important to her to save her little world of love from everyone and just be happy. The sisters had not seen each other for months, either because they were moving or settling into a new family life, or because they were busy with household chores. Finally, they decided to sit together in a cozy cafe and talk about life. Karina at once noticed that Melissa changed somehow imperceptibly. She got better, became fresh, and her eyes were shining. She could not help it and complimented her. "Melissa, you look beautiful. You have become very different. I don't even know how to say it. Happy, calm. Your hair has changed. Well done. It suits you very well. So what shall we order? Coffee or a glass of wine?" Melissa answered entreatingly, "And I can't have wine now. I'm going to tell you the news. You'll fall down. I'm pregnant. Just do not say anything. I myself am shocked." Karina even opened her mouth in surprise. "Wow, what about Yegor? Is he happy?" "Crazy. Now you will have 5 children. You're really something, Melissa." The woman laughed. Igor was very happy, but I even cried at first. For some reason it became so scary. I remembered my late friend Kristen, and I was just thinking, God forbid anything should happen. I mean, how am I supposed to deal with all these people by myself? But on the other hand, I've always wanted to have my own baby, to breastfeed it, to bear it. It must be a real pleasure, right? But Yegor surprised me here too. He opened a bank account for me and the kids. He said not to worry. And in general, Karina, I'm very happy with him. I finally felt like a woman. I began to sleep well, stopped fidgeting because of the constant anxiety that I cannot raise one child. We all together every weekend must go somewhere to rest. Kids just love it. And you, my dear? Karina also happily reported, You know, I long resisted, after Mark's scoundrel to me, all other men seen as such scoundrels. But Artem is completely different. He does not sing my dithyrambs, does not swear eternal love. But his actions speak for themselves. He proves his love in practice, and this is very valuable. I hope I will be a mommy soon too. Looking at you, I really want to. I am happy for you, sis. It is so good that we met, that you found me, because it is so important to have a dear person on earth, my own little blood. And I have news for you too. I found out something about our biological mother, and I even found her grave. She hasn't been alive for a long time. Melissa even jumped up in her chair. You what? How did you manage? Who is she? Karina sighed. Katerina Terakova grew up in a dysfunctional family of alcoholics. That's why she went down the wrong path at an early age, got involved with bad company, nowhere to live long, and then almost went to jail for theft. I even managed to get a picture of her, and the beautiful appearance of our mother. Look at her. Melissa looked at the old, yellowed and crumpled photo. It showed a very beautiful, oriental-looking girl with long curly hair and a charming smile. It was now clear to Melissa who she and Karina looked so much like. The same eyes, long fluffy eyelashes, and mop of black hair. Tears flowed from her eyes, and she whispered, Mama, Mama, so beautiful and so unhappy. How could it be? Karina hugged her sister. Yes, Melissa. So now I understand why she immediately gave us into someone else's hands. You should not blame her. Mom just wanted us to have a better fate than her own. We'll go to her grave tomorrow, clean it up, order a monument. No matter what our mom was, we are alive because of her.
Thanks for watching. If you liked the story, write your opinion in the comments.